Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr and welcome to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Now in today's video, after all the buzz that we've had between Core, Cloud of Darkness and all the stuff that's come between them, we have a little bit more of a reprieve banner with Gladiolus' Lost Chapter that's going to give us a rerun of Gladiolus' LD as well as their level 80 Awakening and their LD boards. But it's also going to bring Sabin LD along, which is honestly a little bit of an underrated gem in the same vein as Cypher. And a lot of people, I imagine, will gloss over this banner, but there are aspects to Sabin's kit that I think are actually very noteworthy and worth at least looking at, even if you do ultimately skip this banner in favour of going for him a bit later on. So if you'd like to find out more about Sabin, about Gladio and what he gets, as well as the event that comes along with them, then of course stay tuned and keep on watching. Before we get started, of course, don't forget to check out all of my social media links in the description box below. Over on Twitch, I usually stream 5 days a week where I'm streaming either events with Dissidia Opera Omnia or things like Final Fantasy XIV, Final Fantasy Counter, where we're just sort of rounding up the end of Final Fantasy V. We've got loads of stuff going on, although I am actually away this week, and I'm away as of this video, as it's released, because I'm away on holiday with my partner for just us two on a little getaway for a few days. But don't worry, I will be back next week in full force with all the sort of streaming there is and all the stuff that I've been known to do. Over on Patreon, I also shout out one of my patrons every time I release a video and showcase their title cards that are made especially for them by myself. And today's shout out is going to go to Farbear, who has been on my Patreon for a very long time now and is a Fang fan, as you can see from their title card, who recently got their LD over on JP. So maybe like the stars aligned a little bit with that one. So thank you very much for your support, Farbear. And if you'd like to join in with any of my other benefits when it comes to Patreon, as well as getting the title card, there's lots of things like voice chats we all do together. There's lots of lovely things as well as being part of Would You Pull, all sorts of stuff that you might want to consider becoming a patron yourself. Of course, don't forget to check out all of the other content creators that make the content for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia, as well as all of the other resources in the description box for you to look at with information that's related to the game. So first things first, let's start off with Gladiolus. Now Gladiolus, we know, has been a very, very strong tank for a very, very long time and is returning with his full kit, as well as other items that are on the banner, which will include Gladio's full kit, Sabin's full kit including his brand new LD, Cloud of Darkness's burst only, so just Cloud of Darkness's burst, none of their other weapons, as well as Vayne's EX. So, double LD banner, we're back on the train when it comes to those, and that's always a nice thing to know, but how worthwhile is the banner for you guys? Now with Gladio, like I said, is a tank that has done very, very well in the past, and if you go back a fair few months, I'll have a video that's already related to everything that he does up until this point, and all he gets from this particular banner are his C80, his LD boards, and his high armor plus. That's all that he's going to get, and his LD boards are okay, I guess. Like, they don't do an awful lot for him, but in all honesty, Impulse was such a strong attack already by having those 3 turns where he just cannot be damaged under any circumstances, and he counterattacks like off the bat. It's a very powerful move and has been since its inception. But with Gladiolus' LD board, you get the first turn is a completely free turn, which allows you to set up his skill 1, make sure the Royal Guard is applied, etc., so that you can just start going off with your battery and HP regens, etc. And then when you use Impulse, it gives you a slightly more damage, and it also gives you Royal Guard, gives the Royal Guard ability to your ally, so it's not just his skill 1 that grants it. And you also get more bravery damage dealt up while he has his blink effect active. It's not a lot, honestly. Like, the fact that you can, get a free turn and a free, you don't really get a huge amount out of it. He gets a free turn. He has more damage on his LD. It's a shame that he doesn't kind of extend the buff for Impulse, but honestly, extending it probably makes it too powerful anyway. And, he's still a powerful character. He's still very good at what he does, and his call abilities are also they're also pretty good, and we'll get to in a moment. In terms of high armor, though, if you're going to use Gladio a lot, having the HP damage limit go up for the entire party by 15% is kind of nice, but I think that there are better uses for your blue armor than Gladio. The trouble with Gladio is that while he, like, for the longest period of time, Gladio was like the only really strong tank, really strong defensive support character to stop you from taking damage and counter things, etc. He's now not alone in this regard. Like, you have access to Galoof now, who does a lot of the same things that Gladio does. You have access to Warrior of Light now, who does things in a very similar vein to Gladio without the counter-attacking, but he still keeps you protected better than like most other characters. You even have Porum now, who while not a tank herself, might as well be one with regards to the amount of defensive properties that she brings. So Gladio is still a good character, but he's not a character I would go out of my way to pull for now if you didn't already have him. Having the LD boards and the level 80 and everything is nice, but I wouldn't, if you're gonna pull for a tank, or you're gonna pull for characters that have defensive properties while Gladio's banner is up, I would personally chase after Warrior of Light or Porum instead if you don't already have them. The only reason I would say to have Gladio, I mean, if you really like Gladio, he is still good. Like, he's still good. And because so many people pulled for him the first time around, me talking about Gladio is probably fairly redundant apart from to new players. Which, given the banners that they're on, I would still recommend pulling for Warrior of Light because there's other characters you can get alongside him. Or you'd pull for Porum because the longevity is just that much longer. So Gladio is kind of lower on the priority list than those characters. That being said, his core abilities are actually kind of nice. Like, his core abilities give brave, or like his Tempest gives brave damage reduction and HP damage effects, which he would have gotten from being in a party, and is also a battery. And then his LD call actually grants impulse, like the 100% damage reduction for both bravery and HP, and the debuff evasion. It's not, it's a nice thing to have access to, certainly while you have core available, because core giving those like bravery damage reductions and HP damage reductions and unbreakability to himself and one other party member, if you're planning around it and you wanted to bring the third party member to have Gladio's core ability, that's your entire party protected pretty much. So like it's a nice thing to have access to. But again, if you're using a support based character like your Porums or your Warrior of Lights, etc., you're probably not going to need this. And in events where you don't need this because the enemy's not going to attack all that frequently, well, then you'd probably just bring offensive call abilities instead of Gladio. It's decent, it's still good, it's nice to have because so many players already have Gladio, so it's definitely a worthwhile upgrade. But I don't think you have to go pulling for him now if you don't already have him. So now let's look at Sabin and all the stuff that he gets, because he gets a rework as well as an LD weapon that does elevate him significantly from where he once was. Because Sabin was never typically seen as a particularly strong character. Like, he had perks about him, such as the defense ignoring properties of his plus versions of his attacks, but you could never reliably use his plus versions of his attacks frequently enough to really take advantage of it. Well, his LD does change that, and it makes it a big deal, because defense ignoring properties on attacks is actually very powerful. Like, it's different to brave damage reductions, like so things we'll see in Lufenia Plus going forward, etc. But defense ignoring is still really, really potent. And not only that, but he has other properties with his skills that we've seen from his kit previously that get augmented. So with Sabin's rework, Aura Cannon hits 3 additional uses up, bringing it up to a total of 10, which is a lot of skill uses, considering that he does have a pretty decent EX attack, but it's got a fairly slow recast rate, so you're going to want to use your skills to be able to get that up. And the Aura Cannon Plus, which realistically is the only version of this we really want to be looking at, and I'll get to why when we get to the LD, becomes a Wind/Holy attack, where previously it was only Holy, that ignores defense and hits for double brave HP attack, so double HP dump, and then you get brave regen off of it, which is quite nice. And you also, from the original version of the attack, get you get wind and holy resist down, which is really nice. But normally you got a buff from his EX called Battle Spirit Unleashed, which would have stacks if you used the regular version, and then it would decrease by 2 after, from a maximum of 3 every time you use the plus version. So therefore it was very difficult to then kind of stack it all up. After the last rework he got, rather than the actual EX attack, he got this buff. And so it was difficult to kind of keep up with it unless you started spamming his C65, which was a real pain in the butt. But now you're but as I say, we'll get to the LD, as I'm sure you can imagine, it stops those stacks from going down. Now, going back to the rework itself, the Razor Gale is a very strong attack, like a very, very prominent part of his kit that makes it so that you've got defense ignoring attacks that have delay on them as well. So as long as you're using the plus version of Razor Gale, once you've got those Battle Spirit Unleashed stacks activated, you've then got a delay attack on top of the fact that you're able to deal those defense ignoring hits, and the delay is by 2 turns, and it's AoE as well. So it's like a really good attack. So by doing a 2-hit Brave HP attack, then a 4-hit Brave HP attack with defense ignoring, Imperil, and he's obviously using those elements in his attacks themselves, it's actually pretty good. Like, I wouldn't say it was groundbreaking necessarily. Like, delay, we've just had Cloud of Darkness, we've got Garland, Cypher even is a delay-based character, so Sabin only actually delays off of this one attack. So in terms of his basic skills, he does a lot of damage like very frequently with decent amounts of Imperil, Enchant, and being able to delay as well. But before now, he would end up having, and before the rework as well, which didn't have the double HP dumps, he wouldn't be able to keep hold of those Battle Spirit Unleashed stacks because they'd always drop after use, which would then result in you having to use a significantly weaker version of it. It doesn't have the delay on it. It's only 1 HP dump. Like, you always want to have those stacks if you can help it. So when we come to Sabin's EX and LD, we'll quickly talk about the C65, which allows him to get 2 stacks of Battle Spirit Unleashed. I previously said that it was 3 stacks of the buff that you can get, but it's actually 4. You would just have to have 3 of them in order to be able to use the plus versions of all of his skills, which includes his EX version, But obviously, if you have 4 stacks and you use one of the plus versions, you would ordinarily lose 2 of them, which then takes you below 3. So you're then using the plain versions of the attacks, which are obviously not nearly as good. Now, Phantom Rush is actually a very powerful attack as well, and it also gives him another buff called Entrusted Techniques, which gives him Holy and Wind Enchant, which is nice, but given that all of his skills are reworked to be Holy and Wind, it's fine. It's nice that you deal extra elemental damage, and it gives him extra offensive stats. But it also, after all of the ingots and everything are put into it, becomes a 5-hit Brave HP attack inflicted 3 times. It gives him a stack of Battle Spirit Unleashed. It's not the fastest recast, as I said earlier, so you're going to want to make as much use out of his skills as you can in order to be able to use this as frequently as possible. But the plus version of this, which is the same as all of the triggers for the plus version of attacks, are for his Battle Spirit Unleashed to be at either 3 or 4 stacks. You get a defense ignoring version of the same attack, which is a big deal. Like I said earlier, defense ignoring is a big part of Sabin's kit. So now let's take a look at the LD that's coming along with it. So the LD is going to be, once you've put everything into it, a defense ignoring 4-hit AoE Brave HP attack that inflicted 3 times, and it's going to give this is going to give you another buff called Tiger Battle Spirit, as well as maxing out your Battle Spirit Unleashed buff straight away for 4 turns. So it also gives the Imperil, as does the rest of his kit, and you also get a free skill use out of it at the end of it. Now the Tiger Battle Spirit buff gives you elemental damage up, HP damage up by 30%, which is a lot considering that he has multiple HP dumps in all of his kits. Whenever you whenever you use a skill, like a plus version of his skills, you don't lose the Battle Spirit Unleashed buff. You don't lose any stacks of it, which means that you're able to start using his Razor Gale much more frequently. He's going to attack a lot more often. Because you're able to do that and you got a free skill use out of it, you're almost undoubtedly going to use that because it's clearly the stronger of his moves. And you also get more of it as long as you're breaking or attacking a broken target. So you can keep this up for a long period of time, even though the fact that you don't have, you only get 4 turns of it initially and you only get 3 uses of the LD, you can keep this up. You also get a Brave and HP variant for Tiger Battle Spirit that extends the Tiger Battle Spirit buff by 1 turn, so that you don't necessarily have to use the skills if you don't want to. Where the Bravery attack is a 3-hit Brave HP attack that refunds Bravery, and the HP attack variant is a 50% splash damage version. So basically this is all going to add up to the ability to really abuse Razor Gale Plus for its multiple HP dump, delaying, enchant / imperil. You're going to be kind of all roads leading to that, and having access to the defense ignoring properties of his full kit at like as much as you can get hold of it, because you're obviously going to be using the EX as well, which is a very hard hitting move that has access to the defense ignoring properties as well. So honestly, there is a lot here to like about Sabin, because he does have a lot of like really fun properties in the defense ignoring aspects that are very, very strong for him. However, delay characters are nothing new. Like, we do have, like I've mentioned it earlier, we have Cloud of Darkness, we have like Garland, Cypher, even if you want an LD based one. There's lots of characters that can do delay, and you know, if you find delay boring, like a lot of players do, as I've spoken about with Cloud of Darkness before, then Sabin's not going to be particularly exciting for you either. And because there's like, the only real aspect of Sabin that he brings to the table is the defense ignoring thing, which is a big deal. He does, you know, he does also come back on a Lufenia Plus banner that's got a very, very powerful character on it, which is Lan and Rain. And by the time that banner comes around, Sabin's probably not going to get used all that much. Like, you can make him work. Defense ignoring is really powerful, but I don't feel that there is any point in which he is mandatory for people to use. If he's a favourite of yours, then he will do well. He's got, you know, Razor Gale Plus is a really strong attack. His LD is really strong. His EX is really strong. He's got a lot of really nice things, but I just think there are other characters that can do similar things to him, if not exactly the same, and most people already own those characters. Now, with regards to Sabin's call abilities, they're actually pretty good. Like, Razor Gale Plus is a very strong attack in and of itself anyway, and it being a defense ignoring, and it's Razor Gale Plus I should add as well, so therefore it's defense ignoring, you get a multi-HP dumping attack that inflicts Holy Wind resist down for 4 actions, which is fine, I guess, but you don't get any enchantment out of it. But you do get a 2-turn delay out of it. If you already have Cypher, then you're probably going to use him because he does the debuffs as well, whereas this is more kind of akin, you could use this alongside characters that make use of those elements, but most characters that make use of those elements will probably have some sort of imperil attached to them or a way of dealing weakness damage regardless, like Cypher. But it's still decent, and then you also get the Tiger Break LD call, which is, it doesn't have any delay or anything on it like Razor Gale does, but it does give you attack and HP damage up 20%, which is kind of pleasant. It doesn't last very long, unfortunately, so I don't think Sabin's call abilities are an absolute must-have, like, you know, certainly not on the level of, say, Kurasame or anything. But if you're going for Sabin, there's times where you would use this, like certainly Razor Gale Plus, you know, and having access to the extra Tiger Break is going to do a lot of damage and give you an extra bit of damage for the turns at which that's available. And then in terms of his High Armor Plus, he has Bravery, he has Attack Keystone on his armor, which I think, given the fact that he does do himself a lot of favours in terms of the damage he deals, like he has Self-Enchant, he imperils the elements he's attacking, so that's instantly a good thing. He also has the defense ignoring properties. There are fights where he is definitely going to sort of deal maximum damage very frequently, but obviously as brave damage reductions and damage checks start progressing further into the game, Sabin is going to fall off like over the course of time, like any damage dealer would. So, with regards to giving like blue armor to him, I probably wouldn't personally, but I'm sure that there are lots of fans of him out there that would, because increasing his bravery damage limit by what, 30% is a lot. Like, it is a lot, and he's an LD based damage dealer as well, which means that people who want to make use of him can pair him up with all sorts of burst based characters and will do well. Like, if you've got a Garland stood next to him and the burst effect is active, you've got 2 delaying characters that are going to just deal buttloads of damage. Cloud of Darkness for the same reason. If you really like Sabin, he'll absolutely work. It's just, I don't feel that he is a high priority character for the majority of players. So now let's talk about the Lufenia event that comes with Sabin in Gladiolus, and this is going to be, obviously being a lost chapter, a repeat of the bosses we fought with Gladio, which is the Optimus turrets. Now, what these guys' main gimmick is that they put up a defensive aura around them at the start of the fight, as well as in certain periods of the fight. The HP damage will be listed. It's 79% or 69%. and then 48 or like 39 percent HP, well, they'll put this aura up and they will take 1 damage from everything. Their defenses become massive, and it is a defense-based thing rather than a brave damage reduction thing, which means that Sabin, obviously being a defense-ignoring character, will get around it. So while this aura is up, you also can't instant break them, and you can't gain bravery. Like, it's a really nasty aura that you absolutely have to get rid of as soon as possible. So if you break them, then that aura goes away until the next time one of them hits those HP thresholds. But there's actually a lot of ways that you can get around this, like a pretty staggering number, lots of which many players will own. So if you wanted to, you could use Gladio and his LD ability to make it so that they attack him, deal no damage, and then either your counter or your next following attack is going to break them, and that's going to take it away. Porum, similarly, can just kind of sit there and go, we've got last stand. Doesn't matter if you're going to do 75,000 damage, because obviously they gain a massive amount of bravery as well to do a single target HP attack. Because last stand's going to make it, unless they're both targeting the same character, you just kind of go, well, we'll just tank it and then break you in response. Because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to either tank it and then counter it, or you're supposed to use Sabin to get around the massive amounts of defense. But if you didn't want to use either of them, you could use Kais with his Bravery Plus during a launch, alongside, say, Cloud or Cloud or Lael or Dark Knight Cecil, who is also an interesting way to get around the orb, which I'll get to in a moment. You can use Amiditelian or Edward's Call abilities, which reduce enemy bravery to 0. You could use Bart's with his LD, or even his LD Call ability as well, because that reduces bravery to 0 before breaking them. You could use Kadaj's EX. You could use Sephiroth's EX or his BT effect, and you'll have multiple opportunities for to be able to do this. You'll need to do it 3 times per boss. So if you've got AoE methods of doing it, even better. Also, the orb on this is quite specific, but it's specific, but it's still a delay orb, which means that what they want you to do is not allow them to take turns, basically. So if what you want you to do is do AoE delay and deal weakness damage. So if you have Garland available, or Cypher, or Cloud of Darkness, or Sabin, you're going to be able to deal with this as long as you have any kind of enchant Imperialer. Ash is an absolutely fantastic example of this. Kurasame is an absolutely fantastic example of this. There's lots of ways in which you can make it so that your delay-based characters are still dealing weakness damage through just using a Garland will just tear through them like butter when it comes to doing AoE, doing delay and weakness damage at the same time, because that's what's needed to be done. So once you can get past that, and once you can get past those big those big damage auras, and the defensive auras which make it so that they deal loads of damage unless you can reduce their bravery and break them, then it's one of those fights that's really easy, but in a really boring kind of way. Because when it's a delay-based orb, you do find that the easiest thing to do is just to stop them from getting a turn in the first place. So if you've got Sephiroth, for example, Sephiroth and Garland, or Garland and a Sephiroth friend unit, even better, where you just, they've gotten to 70% HP. I'll pop Sephiroth's BT from a friend unit. They'll be set to 1 bravery every turn, and then no matter what I do, all I have to do is do a 2-hit plus bravery attack, which every character has at this point almost, so that you can just break them and then get on with your day. They're the only real aspects that you'll need to worry about with this. If you want to, take your Cloud of Darkness, take your Garland, put Core next to one of them if you want to, and so you can just deal extra damage quickly. Make sure you have a form of Enchant in Peril next to you, and a way to get around those bravery gains, because as long as you can do all of that, it's actually a very, very simple event. So now we come to the big question of the video: should you be pulling on Gladiolus and Sabin's banner? Now, honestly, I think that unless you're really, really tight for tanks or delay-based damage dealers, the answer is probably no. The reason for this, I feel, is twofold. Now, the timing for this banner is awful in terms of resources, because lots of players have just spent out on the likes of Porum, Core, Cloud of Darkness, and maybe your resources have taken a beating from that, because I know mine have. And then with regards to the future banners as well, we need some saving grace for when Tidus comes along, and the plethora of banners that come along with him are like Setzer and then Yuna along with Agrius. There's a lot of really high-end banners on the very, very short horizon that people are going to be saving for more. And then not only that, but with both Sabin and Gladio, like certainly in Gladio's case, there are characters that we have that can perform very similar functions to him now, where we couldn't when he was first released. Such as Galoof, Warrior of Light, and Porum. Like, there are a lot of tanks now that we can use or support, like defensive support-based characters that will probably last longer than Gladio now, because his LD boards didn't give him a huge amount. And then with Sabin, you could say the same thing, because delay-based attackers are nothing new. The main thing to focus on when it comes to Sabin is the defense ignoring properties of his kit, which is a fairly rare commodity at this point in the game. But truth be told, if you need a delay-based character, at least for the next, for a while, Garland and Cloud of Darkness are going to have you covered, especially knowing that their future means they have burst pluses coming along relatively early on, and they're delay-based attackers. So if you don't feel that you need to go for that, then, Sabin, it's going to be fans of Sabin that really want him at that point. That being said, though, I mean, Gladio is still good. Like, Gladio is still a good character, and many, many people already have him as well. And because Impulse is still a great move. It still works. Like, if your opponent is going to be taking loads and loads of turns, Gladio with a well-timed Impulse will just render the whole thing redundant. And that's really good. So having his C80 and the LD call ability is quite nice to have access to if you need it. And the LD boards, while they don't break the game or anything, kind of prove just how good Gladio has been up until this point. And how good he, you can still use him from now. And, like, that's a good amount of longevity. And Sabin, like Cypher, might not be like the next Garland or the next Cloud of Darkness, and a lot of people probably are going to skip over him. But he isn't bad. Like, he's actually very good. Like, he has 2-turn delays that he can use repeatedly. And I don't think that people value the defense ignoring properties of kits like his that are, like, enough. I think that there are certain missions where ignoring defense, I mean, the event here is a perfect example of that, where, yes, there are ways around it, but why go to all the trouble when you can just bash through it? There are reasons to like Sabin, even if you don't necessarily need him. There are players that will want him, and he will function very well for those players. So now it's time for Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to let your voice be heard and let everyone know whether you would or wouldn't pull on any given banner and why that might be. So once again, a massive thank you goes out to all of my patrons for casting their votes and letting everyone know their comments as well. And if you would like the full database of comments, then consider joining up on Patreon, as I can only post so many comments during any particular video. Now, I don't think it's going to be much of a surprise to know what people's opinions are when it comes to this particular banner. But we'll go straight into the numbers, and it does sadden me because Sabin's a really cool character. But 5% of people said yes, they were going to use gems here. 5% of people said they were going to use 100 or more tickets here. 16% that said they were going to use less than 100 tickets here. And a whopping 74% of people have said no to this banner. And I do think that a lot of it comes down to the two reasons that I stated in my own opinions as well. And I do these polls because I want to reflect and I want to really drive home the fact that it is not just my opinion. This is why we have this entire poll. There are a lot of people that say the same sorts of things. It's the poor timing and the fact that there are similar characters that will do similar things, and the fact that most people already have Gladio if they've been playing for a while, and therefore they'd only be pulling for Sabin. So let's go into some of the comments. JRPG fan says, this was already a skip for me before the jaw-dropping release of Core, as I picked up Gladio's LD already, and I plan to grab Sabin's LD while trying to pick up the twins' LD and BT. This is referring to Lan and Rain. I did mention this earlier, I believe, but Sabin's re-release on his LD comes back with Lan and Rain's BT+, which is staggeringly powerful. So that's something to bear in mind as well, that Sabin's LD does come back. If you want someone fun and new to play with that's like a consolation prize, then you might want to consider skipping here as well, because, he's not lost forever. Gladiolus can still do the things he does, but he isn't as content smashing as he used to be. New players may want to grab him if they're in need of a tank, but overall this is a pretty easy banner skip in order to save resources. Yeah, exactly that. Look, you have to make concessions somewhere. Like, there are going to be people that will want Sabin, but you know, most people are going to say no. I just don't want people to think that he's a terrible character, because he actually isn't. Like, defense ignoring is a very cool property to have access to across your entire kit, and the fact that you have an AoE delay and multi-HP dumps, it's nice even if it's not game-breaking. Goose, however, says gems. I've got no love for Gladio, and I would happily skip, but Sabin is my guy. His kit's got a bit of everything, delay, battery, damage. All in all, he just looks hella fun to use, and I'm probably going to blue him. Can't argue with that. If you're going to enjoy him, then absolutely go ham. Like, you know, I think that blue armor for him is going to be an interesting thing to see, because I do think that for a while he is going to cap those damage, those bravery hits, because he has so many offensive things in his favor. So it'd be very interesting to see. I'd actually be very interested to see how that does. Striking says, sadly, Sabin will likely be a unit I have to pass up, mainly due to the fact that I'll be pulling for Core, Cloud of Darkness, Queen, Tidus, Reno and Rosa, Setzer and Waka, Leon, and then it's straight into Eunice Badge. I like Sabin, and I feel like he got treated quite well with his LD, but sadly he's the most skippable upcoming unit. Yeah, like, it is sad, because he is actually pretty good, and I just think that the timing issue is just so big for him. And it's a sentiment that's kind of spread across the board. Because Boopar Wiggum says as well, I really like Sabin, but there's just so much to pull for coming up. I'll throw 100 or so tickets, pray to RNGs and see if I get lucky. But I can live without him for now. So I think that this is probably the most skippable banner that we've seen for quite some time, which is unfortunate because both of the characters on it are actually very good. So that's going to be all for today's video. Thank you all very much for joining me today, and let me know in the comments below whether you're planning on pulling for either Sabin or Gladiolus, or whether you're saving for future banners, or whether you're spent out from the last few that we've had, because while we got Divine Summon boards, it's still been an expensive time, and there's some much more expenses coming our way. So let us know in the comments below what you think of the banner and what you think of the event as well. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on any future videos I might be making, and I will see you guys next time. So thank you all very much, and I'll see you then. Take care!